Clear prop.
All right, welcome to Terminal Talk Radio. This is episode 6. I'm Mike.
I'm Steve.
And today we're going to get into the CFI instructor ratings, and we're also going to get into some current events as usual, mainly regarding Boeing and their plans to potentially include foldable wings on the 777, which is quite interesting. And, kind of a segue into that potentially might be a little bit of airport terminal talk and the layout of the airport structures. So with that said, let's just dive right into the instructor ratings. You basically have 3 instructor ratings. You have the CFI, Certified Flight Instructor, CFII, Certified Instrument Instructor, and MEI, Multi-Engine Instructor. All of these instructor ratings are obviously going to be important, especially if you're looking to build hours and go ahead and start a career with an airline. But of all 3, personally speaking, I would say I'm more interested in the multi-engine instructor rating. Why? The more multi-engine time you have, generally the more competitive you're going to be when applying for those jobs with airlines. Steve, you want to go into a little bit more details on the other ratings?
Yeah, so the CFI initial, that's your pretty standard instructor rating. That's going to be where, you'll get your private, your commercial, all that. The more specialized training, like the instrument and the multi, require that additional rating for your instructor to have, or for you to have if you want to turn around and instruct. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. Starting out, it's pretty simple. Just find a CFI, any will do. Once you get more into it, you'll kind of get the hang of it and be able to find a CFII and get your instrument, MEI to get your multi, and then you can turn around and do the exact same and build up your time. Like Mike was saying, the instructor ratings are great to have to build up flight time, especially that multi-engine. That's going to make you a pretty attractive candidate for any job that you have that you're applying for. So definitely look into getting those, but at least that'll give you kind of a basic rundown of what the CFI licenses are and what you need to look for as you're getting started in your CFI, as you're just starting your training. Just make sure to have that. One thing I will mention too is when you're getting the CFI initial, you do need to take that with a 2-year CFI, basically a CFI that's been instructing for at least 2 years to have a little bit more experience under their belt. But anyway, like I said, don't worry too much about the details on all that. You'll get the hang of it as you're more involved with flight training, as you're figuring things out. So
as a quick side note, I will say, now a lot of student pilots initially starting out, typically they want to see a seasoned instructor. What do I mean when I say seasoned? Usually a pilot that has a few thousand hours, probably someone who has airline experience, which is great. Not that you can't find an instructor of that caliber, but to be honest with you, the main demographic for a flight instructor is, in terms of age, more than likely going to be that 18 to 30 range. Okay, so not that they're not qualified, they're just generally going to be younger. Why? Due to the pilot shortage that we have going on. So as soon as these instructors are reaching 1,500 hours, they're on their way starting their careers, just like you yourself would be if you were in their position. So don't let the age factor be a determining factor, if you will, for you when deciding on a flight instructor. And not to mention, keep in mind, that instructor, if they are younger, they just went through the same training that you're going through and passed. And they're up to date on all the regs. So, they're going to be a great guide to get you through and get you exactly what you need.
that's a great point, Mike. I'm glad you brought that up. One thing to consider is the CFI initial, the CFI check ride is the most failed check ride ever. So these guys that have that rating, it's not like they just went through a program, bada boom, they're a CFI and they're now teaching somebody else and maybe they don't know what they're doing. They're held to very high standards and they all have to pass that same test with the FAA. So have a little bit more faith in them, because that is a great point. If you head out to a flight school right now, there's probably going to be some younger guys teaching, and that might scare the regular person off who's used to maybe a college professor that's been doing something in that field for 30 or 40 years, now is teaching it. It's not really the case with aviation. This is kind of the stepping stone for many pilots. So it's typical that, they'll be a little bit younger, like you were saying, probably sub 1,500 hours right now with the pilot shortage going on. It's, a lot better pay once you get to that point. So not too many people are sticking around at the flight instructor gig, but that doesn't mean at all that, they're not as qualified. They all have to pass that same exam, held to the same standard. So don't be scared off by that. That's a great point that you brought that up.
Exactly. So kind of segueing here into our current events category. If, like I said at the beginning of the show here, Boeing, they're contemplating having foldable wings on their 777s.
Yeah, so Boeing, they're making this 777 with a longer wingspan. The issue that they don't want to have is the added space at the airport. Between the gates, they're looking at, I think it was 15 feet extra from the next, I think it was a 747 was the next closest aircraft. So a little bit wider, a little bit more space at the airport. And so their idea with this airplane is to make the wingtips foldable, so you can gain, some of that space back, and it'll bring it back. I mean, it's not the whole wing doesn't fold up, which I was kind of disappointed when I read the article. I was thinking, something, from a spaceship kind of an idea where it would just fold up and dock in the gate. But the wingtips fold up. It looks pretty cool. FAA is giving a little bit of pushback, with safety, obviously, making sure that, tips aren't flying off and maybe malfunctioning in flight, things like that. They want to make sure, down packed. But I thought it was a pretty cool idea, to, shorten the wingspan, make it more maneuverable and fit it in a smaller gate.
Steve, hold the phone, my man. I think this is a terrible idea. Okay? You're sitting here saying you basically want to see X-Wing fighters out of Star Wars hopping into these gates. I'm sorry, but as a passenger, I'm drawing the line. We go to these airport terminals already. We've got to wait in TSA lines. They nickel and dime us on the baggage fees. But wait, it gets better. Many airlines decide, you know what? Let's jam more seats into our fuselages. Oh, and so everyone's just sitting right on top of each other. And now what you're saying is, you know what? Let's make the gates smaller too. What do you want next, Steve? You want smaller bathrooms while we're at it? I don't see it. I can't get my head wrapped around this one. I mean, I think, personally speaking, let's just go back to old times where you would show up to the terminal. There was no building. You just walk out onto the actual tarmac. You go up the stairs, bada bing, bada boom. You're in the plane. You go.
Well, Mr. Orville, right over here back in the day. That's going.
You want to talk? You want to talk about saving airport costs? Well, not much cost there when you have no electric bills.
That's true. No, that's not realistic. But what is realistic is having, instead of maybe 3 gates at the end of a terminal, maybe having 10 airplanes being able to fold their wings up, drive straight in and park next to each other. Not necessarily that the inside of the airport has to be smaller. I'm just saying you can fit more airplanes there.
But with more space, airlines could justify to airport authorities more gates. Therefore, we're just jamming more and more people into less and less space, unless the terminal and hub gets bigger, which doubtful.
How about this? How about the smaller airports right now that maybe they don't have room for 2 737s to park on the ramp? Well, now they can fold up the wings, pull right in. Now the smaller airport that usually wouldn't have options for, competitive airline service, maybe they just have one little commuter coming in right now. They would have options to maybe expand. get to those other markets that might not be reachable at this time with big old wings taking up the whole ramp at a smaller airport.
But that's where my Orville Wright argument comes back into play. If you want to be a small airport and have these big old birds landing at your at your runway, fine, let them land there. We're just not building the huge infrastructure to accommodate, the Wi-Fi, the burger places, all the other hoopla that comes with an airport terminal. We don't need the ritz and the glitz and the glamour. As a local airport, we just need to get in and get out and be on with our merry selves. Okay?
Sounds like Mike needs to register with maybe NetJets or Wheels Up or something to get the glitz and the glamour he's after. I don't know. I think the folding wings is a good idea.
Debatable. I'd like to see it implemented, and let's have a couple test runs first. But you know what I am glad that you just brought up there? Wheels Up. Wheels Up, a great company. They're out there flying King Airs predominantly, but they have a nice little fleet for some private charter. So if you're looking for a reasonable way to get around, and maybe you want to charter out a nice little plane for a vacation you're going on, you should check out Wheels Up.
Yeah, they're actually a very exciting company right now to see. They're expanding very quickly. In addition to the King Airs, they're also on the Citation XL. So they got both the turboprop and the jets. So yeah, it's a pretty cool company. Kind of a unique take to aviation. Getting away from those terminals. Kind of more on-demand charter. And hey, maybe if you're not a customer, maybe you're a pilot for them. Check them out.
All right. So Steve pointed out to me today this YouTube video from Hank Hessling. And you ask yourself, who's Hank Hessling? Oh, man, that's a mouthful just saying his first and last name. Anyways, go on to YouTube, search him up. He's proposing a theory for airports. He wants to revolutionize them with circular runways. Now, in theory, could it potentially work and be great and be more efficient for airports? Sure, probably so. But in theory, communism is also great. And we both know in reality, it's just not that good. I think the same case would happen here. Okay? How in the world are air traffic controllers supposed to have, let's just say Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world. How are they going to have 15 flights coming in and out, bada bing, bada boom, landing and taking off on a circular runway in harmony? It's not possible, folks. Okay, there's a reason why we have runways just parallel to each other. It works. It's not broken. We don't need to fix it. Hesslink, what are you doing out here? Steve, what's your take on this garbage?
This is something we can finally agree on. I'll fight for the Boeing wings folding up all day, but circular runways, I agree. I don't have the idea in my head of how that's supposed to work. It doesn't work. If we're worried about runway incursions right now with straight runways with one direction,
thank you.
Let's put a circle around the whole airport, having three. He claims three aircraft can land or take off at the same time. I don't know. That sounds like a mess, a disaster waiting to happen. I don't see how that works.
Well,
on the simulation, it looks cool, but there's a human error. We can make simulations of our runways doing cool things if we space all of our airplanes an inch apart. But guess what? It's just not realistic. So I don't know. I don't get the circular runway idea.
Not only are you constantly just shooting crosswind approaches, but then it's like the way in this model that they depict, the runway is banked.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel
That
like
would
you're
really
gonna,
feel like every landing was a crosswind landing if you're dipping your wing
eh,
the whole way down. And
right?
what happens on the first one where the inner wing catches
It just
and spins you out?
yeah,
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it.
instant disaster. I mean,
Plus, look at the size that your airport would have to be to now have a runway going all the way around it.
let me say this: if this Mr. Hesslink works for an actual airport design company or mapping company, I mean, whoever signed this off, as gave him the approval, they should probably lose their jobs. I mean, this just says bad written all over it. Okay, from a theory, from a safety, from just practical standpoint, and none of it seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I just I don't know what he was thinking, Steve.
Well, to
One
go
of
back
those times when you just have to shake your head.
to go back to the oval right situation we were talking about earlier.
Hey, that's my boy now. Be careful.
Yeah, I don't mean any disrespect. But back in the olden days, they didn't have runways. They had airfields. You would just land into the wind, whatever direction it was coming. So what about that? What about having maybe not necessarily a 360-degree piece of cement that you could land whatever direction you wanted, but maybe a certain angle,
No, but
so that you can get a little extra wiggle room on your crosswind, and maybe 15 degrees either way, an hourglass shaped runway.
you bring up a good point again with that. What if we had a large circular runway, which, like you're saying, an aircraft could then land wherever, in whatever direction, into the wind? Yes, again, makes sense. The only issue I see there is just how on God's green earth does air traffic control monitor that type of traffic when it's just kind of coming in from everywhere? I just don't see it. I just don't know how. I think more than anything, it's not, again, the theory standpoint makes sense. The reality, just, it's not practical. I don't know how you could, you know back when I was in school, even, just studying aviation in general, I had a teacher say, technically speaking, the fastest and most economic way of traveling was just shooting yourself up as high as you can into space, and then just coming in and landing straight down. That'd be the fastest way to do it. The problem is, how do we have ATC communicate with aircraft moving that high at those rates of speed and relay messages if they're coming at each other? It's more of a logistical logistics standpoint.
And I actually I have heard of that before, about just launching up into outer space,
Right.
landing wherever you're going. Yeah, I have heard that. But yeah, I
But
mean, bottom line is we got to be safe. We got to have some order, and
who knows
where we're at right now. So
as we spoke about in the previous podcast about Musk, maybe Musk can take this on as well.
that's true.
And if we can get the technology there, who knows? 20, 30 years down the road, we might just be laughing at this podcast right now.
True.
And while we're out here, kind of on a media topic, right now we just updated the website. We're now having direct links to the podcast and our blog articles. So be on the lookout for those. We're going to continue to add more podcast episodes and really, produce some great articles, relevant, maybe humorous to a degree. But check those out. Check out the Twitter account, Instagram, constantly posting. Steve, My goodness, I feel like I've seen you put up 10 different pictures on Instagram within 10 minutes, it almost seems.
But we try to keep it updated, try to keep it fresh. So yeah, definitely keep that fresh and updated. We'll keep adding as much as we can as far as content goes. Make sure to keep sharing with your friends. We're getting some decent followers, so we're excited about the growth that we've seen. Thank you for your support. But keep sharing, keep helping out. Like I mentioned in some of the posts on Instagram, keep sharing it with your friends. Aviation's a great hobby, a great career. We definitely want to share it with those around us. It's very exciting industry. So let's share it and keep people coming to aviation. Let's get this industry growing. But for now, that's going to end our episode. Thank you for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.